Welcome to Faith Works Live. Here's your host, Rebecca Haynie.
It is such a good time. It's the day the Lord has made, and we get to talk about, how to keep this land free in this great state of Iowa. Rebecca Haynie, my name, and the name of the show is Faith Works Live. That's what we believe. We show our faith by our works. And what does that look like, and how do we do it? I'm glad you asked, because that's why we're here. And we get to talk with awesome folks like my pal and our now official consultant. Ryan Rhodes is our special guest today, caucus analyst extraordinaire. He's done this whole caucus thing quite a few times now, and he's been paid to do it. He's been a paid campaigner, organizer, consultant, and all of this. I get to pontificate from the cheap seats, but he actually, gets paid to help with candidates win elections and organize in Iowa. So he knows basically how the sausage is made. And he's been so kind and gracious as to repeatedly give his analysis throughout this caucus cycle. So I brought him on for one more caucus talk, probably before the big day. And he's interrupted his family vacation to talk with us. So Ryan, I'm grateful for that. How are you, brother?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me. So it's exciting. We're in that final month before these caucuses.
How are things looking to you from the caucus cycle? So have you signed on? Are you representing any campaigns presently? Just
No,
for my curiosity.
No, I'm not. I did
Okay.
I did some work before, but I am unaffiliated again.
I appreciate your take on all this because you know so much about the inner workings of the campaign and what it takes to be successful in Iowa. We've seen another debate since the last time we talked, although I'm not hearing that move the needle for an awful lot of people. I'm not sure if I know anyone that changed their decision based on the debate, but I'm happy to hear your thoughts. Do you think that any of that made any difference at all? Of course, Donald Trump wasn't there. For everyone else who was there, DeSantis, Haley, Vivek, and Chris Christie, do you think that last debate made any difference in terms of their electability or their excitement factor?
What I think happened is I think a few people kind of maybe solidified a little bit of where they were at, because I think the people who already liked them were watching. I'm not sure a lot of the undecideds necessarily got out there. But in the end, if it moved the needle, I don't think we're talking more than a point or two. So
Okay.
nothing in this drastic field of things look like it moved the needle. Oddly enough, something that might have actually done more would have been actually the DeSantis and Newsom debate, because this really at the start and the finish kind of ate his lunch. In the middle, there was a little kind of lull in there. I mean, from my frustration, it felt like Sean Hannity was giving entirely too much deference to Gavin Newsom. But at the same time, it just showed that their argument is so bad for another candidate. They might have actually locked in Biden for the next session, because if they're going to put Newsom up to debate and he already got his lunch eaten once, are you really going to continue doing that and ruining his chances at front runner status, trying to defend a bad administration of policies? So I think that one may have had another difference. I also think, while it is a CNN debate, I do think that final debate could be big for folks in Iowa. While we see polls that are different, I still think there's a huge chunk of people that can change their mind. That's not necessarily showing up in the way they're doing the polls, where they're forcing people to make a decision.
Yeah.
But if somebody's going to make a move, they're going to have to do it now and during that debate.
Yeah, and I had way more fun watching the DeSantis Newsom debate than I did, probably than I should have. I thought he did a great job on that, and I think the one-on-one format really helps him. It's tailor-made for all the success, to contrast all the success he's had in Florida versus all the disaster of California. Even, he brought up that Gavin Newsom's own in-laws decided to evacuate California and escape for Florida. So just like stuff like that, no one else can do that. No one else can make that argument and take it to the left in that way. And I think that maybe he was still riding high on some of that mojo when DeSantis came into that next debate, because that was his continual trump card. I guess I should find his. That's a little weird to say that, I suppose, when his competitor is Trump, but you know what I mean. Just over and over again, he was saying, well, this is what happened. This is what we did. It's not just what would you do, because that's a very strong argument, I think, and it has been in the past, I guess, is that someone's not just talking the talk, but he's actually done it. And so if you have a record of achievement, normally that plays very well for the Iowa caucus cycle, for the typical conservative voter. They want to see that you've actually done something about that. Like I said, this year feels a little different, but I thought that overall DeSantis had a strong advantage whenever it came to questions where they asked him about policy, because he could say, you don't have to ask me what I will do, just look at what I have done. I've already done it. And that's his strongest selling point, or it should be.
Yeah, and he's in the middle of doing it right now. He's in
Mm.
Florida active as governor, and regardless of how good your record can be, it's always good to be able to have that very recency.
Yes.
I think he's proven that he's a much better governor than Governor Haley was, but at the same time, all of her stuff is previous. She can't really grandstand right now as a governor, get new things done. So her record has to kind of go back and live as it is without any changes. He's able to go out and do other things that can garner some attention, and which he's done this year, certainly. So I think he has the advantage there. Obviously Vivek has never been elected, so he's not able to go and do those things, but you see him jumping up and going, hey, nobody should, we shouldn't be on the ballot if Trump's not going to be on the ballot in Colorado, just as a show of unity there with them, and kind of doing that. So you've got to go out and make your own spots there, which he's trying to do with that. So I think DeSantis has that built-in advantage there as well.
And one thing that I find is interesting, since we're talking about the debate formats, and we'll get to Colorado. Oh, trust me, we will. But one thing that I notice, and that seems to be coming out in much more stark way, at least to me, is the generational difference in the way someone like a Vivek handles himself in a debate, because it's not just about who's in the room. It's not about playing the time of like 2 hours or whatever that debate might be. He's looking for the sound bites, and he'll come out very aggressively, and he will target specifically the things that come out of his mouth sound like it would get you an attaboy on a message board. But you don't say that to someone in real life for many people. and I think you see that disdain between Vivek and Haley, just in terms of, if people follow the drama. He has made they both have personally insulted each other now at a level that seems like it is personal and not just political to me. But I think he does that because he knows the stronger punches work in internet land, where he gets a lot of his boost and his bumps are from the people that aren't watching the debates, but they see the clips afterward. And, like you said, with the Newsom DeSantis debate, I think most people probably weren't watching the whole thing unless they're wonks like us. But they'll get the best, they'll get the greatest hits version of it, and in a 4-minute YouTube roundup the day afterward. And those clips are what will, that's what pays, that's what will reap the dividends. And I think that's kind of Vivek's whole strategy right now. That, and he's essentially moved to Iowa for the last month or so they're investing a lot in our state.
Yeah, and I think that's actually something that I would give Vivek the most credit for, is in every single instance in these debates, their social media team and the people that were on top of that, they had those clips going out. I mean, like within minutes of them being said, they were clipping, and then they were putting it out, and they were making those moments go viral. So whether you were watching the debate or not, you got those clips of something you want to hear. I think people that directly watched or were at the debate have a different take on how he performed overall than maybe the internet does, and the people watching that weren't just the wonks out there. They're watching every detail. So in that case, in a lot of ways, I do think his team, his actual campaign team, stepped up above what I've seen from anybody else in these debates for the output of how they were displaying the candidate and showing that, hey, maybe he won the debate because of action the next day. I know in particular, one of the debates, DeSantis people were really way behind in that. I think they've caught up and they've started doing a better job of that in the last two. But I think, campaign team around, that does matter. Is that going to be a 20-point swing? No. But it gets you those sound bites. It may get you some fast cash in when you're seeing those small dollar donors as people are going on. And it just gets you in the forefront of somebody's mind first. So that, when you have those teams to do that, that is something I think that does make those little differences to get you, that extra point or two as it goes.
Mm-hmm. Last time we were talking, I know we mentioned the battle of the yard signs, and that usually you can get a pretty good indication on certain neighborhoods and how candidates are doing in Iowa based on yard signs. And I will say, I think I've finally seen my first Nikki Haley yard sign. It took a minute, but I don't know. Does she have a lane here? I don't see a lot of a huge support, except maybe for more of the corporatist wing of the, I mean, I call them rhinos, but the Republicans that, they probably don't invite me to dinner very often, but they maybe are impressed with her. I just think anything that she has done, like you said, as a governor, it's all locked in. So that's an important note between the two of them, but she just hasn't been performing as well as I would have expected. And she's got some baggage in terms of it, not only just being soft on a lot of issues, but waffling and having now some maybe negative association with big liberal donors that are giving her campaign money. What do you think? How do you think any of that will have an impact on her Iowa performance? I don't know. I guess I don't want to discount her, but I don't know anyone who's super passionate about Nikki Haley right now.
Well, I think there's a few things. One, she's very polished. I mean, as a candidate coming off for I'm polished, I've done this, I can give my talking points and hit that, with the exceptions of when Vivek has kind of thrown her off her game. And then when Tim Scott did a couple times when they got into like the little South Carolina brawl together, I think you've seen those. Otherwise, she is pretty just even and set. And so I think she comes off very polished as a politician. I don't know that that's what people are looking for, because her lane is this. She's chosen and she's going down essentially the same lane as Chris Christie is. It's the full scale never Trump lane, basically. They're going out there. She's not, I don't think she has a future, regardless of how she does. I don't think she has a long-term future up against Trump, because she's not taking Trump votes. She's not taking conservative votes who go, I want somebody who's good on policy and policy. I liked what the White House gave me before.
Yeah.
She's taking that I don't like Donald Trump vote. And so if DeSantis falls off or something, I don't think she picks up those votes, because I think the DeSantis people go, well, we wanted Trump. We wanted like the Trump policies, the MAGA policies. We want those conservative policies, maybe a little less baggage or something like that. So all of a sudden, those people, I don't think the average DeSantis voter hates Donald Trump. I think they just want something that's a little bit more set. They don't have to maybe go to their neighbor and say, oh, look what Trump said or something like that and defend that. They get to have all the conservative policy they've been looking for without all the other stuff. So I think those people end up reverting back to Trump if it's a Trump versus Haley say. Whereas I think if DeSantis can be the other one heads up against Trump, and Nikki Haley falls off, I think DeSantis actually pulls in the Nikki Haley people, because they have to go somewhere. And I don't see them, and I don't see a lot of those people instantly gravitating back towards Trump. I think they go, okay, well, DeSantis wasn't necessarily our guy, but he's not the Trump there. So I think DeSantis can pick up Haley people who falter on Haley, or if she falls out, where I don't think Haley can do the same. I think it becomes an overwhelmingly landslide again. Not that the polls wouldn't say that already in those type of scenarios. So each person has a different path. That's her path. DeSantis is going to have to get out there and close the sale. He's not flashy. He's not a people have said, oh, maybe he's kind of autistic. Well, he's just so zoned in on policy that sometimes he really doesn't embellish. He doesn't necessarily jump up and give you that flash I think that has been a problem for him, is getting a little bit more flash, getting a little bit more of that. Well, how do you hook me? How do you make me fall in love with you, not just the policies? And that is part of the campaign. It's not really part of governance, but it is part of the campaign. And that's something that he's going to have to kind of say, look, we're voting for a president, not just somebody to campaign as well.
Well, and I think it's fascinating that we're doing this in our time versus others. If you look historically, like even if it was just think of recent history, if you were running against someone like a John McCain or I don't know, John Kerry or anyone in those recent, like Mitt Romney wasn't a flashy guy. And I didn't I didn't care for Mitt Romney, but I just, if anybody needs to know the history, there's no love lost there. But at the same time, we're living in a uniquely performative age. He's going up, he would be going head to head in the case of Ron DeSantis against Donald Trump, one of the most showman-like candidates that we've ever had. He's first and foremost an entertainer. Like, he is all about the crowd and getting the crowd excited, and he's so unique, and he's very good at it. And so people, love him or hate him, Trump has those strong suits. And so Ron DeSantis is very different. I think his comparison to Calvin Coolidge in the last debate was pretty interesting. Most people don't know anything about Calvin Coolidge. He's kind of had this resurgence of popularity among conservatives that were just like, yeah, that's what we want our president to be. We want it to be a very effective, small government, constitutional, takes a strong stand and won't move, and isn't flashy and doesn't care. He's not going to go out on Twitter and like mouth off and claim the headlines, and that's all we hear about is the negative stuff that this guy says. Maybe we want that again, but it would be such a strong contrast. And that could be a hard sell from people who have kind of been won over by the bombast of the Donald Trump personality that does really suck up all the proverbial oxygen. So it's fascinating that he's in, I think maybe in a different time, none of that would be a detriment. But now we're looking at how well a candidate can perform on television in a soundbite, how entertaining can he or she be. And that's never been the standard before, but lo and behold, we're in a brave new world.
Yep, that's very true. And it's funny. So I went in the last few weeks, I've gone to actually everybody's events. Well, it's all the people that matter: Vivek, Haley, DeSantis, and Trump. So I've been to events of every single one of theirs. I will say everybody is going to there is a trailing factor. Donald Trump's events, just there's so many more people in the room. I mean, it is regardless of the polls, the up and down. I mean, he is drawing in a crowd, and he's not even necessarily doing the large scale rallies. Obviously, they're smaller than is normal, but they're a lot bigger than anything else anybody's gravitating towards. And he just does get on that stage. I don't think there's anyone else who can keep people sitting in the room for an hour and a half speech. So he does provide that flash. He told the story of the snake, the snake and the woman. And people, love that. He gets into his greatest hits and stuff like that. So, there's something that people are going to have to overcome on that showman side here. But DeSantis is certainly getting more than he's had. He's going to need, I think, to get out and get in front of more people than he has to try to convince them as well. I don't see this Nikki Haley surge. I mean, there's the Trump rallies, Trump events, and then spacebar DeSantis, spacebar Nikki Haley type of thing. I mean, sure. Vivek was getting more people than Nikki Haley was at her events. Now, from what I saw recently, and obviously I went to an event of each person of theirs. So there is that level of, if somebody's willing to go out for you to do that event, to see you, to take you in, they're probably more likely to come out to a caucus. Also, depending on whether or whatnot we may have in Iowa on January 15th and having to sit in a room for hours to do this. So yes, I do think it's possible for certain people to overperform where they've been at, but at the end of the day, they are going to have to go and catch Donald Trump. Donald Trump has certainly also got out there. I was as hard as kind of anyone on the ground here, saying in Iowa, for a long time, I just didn't see much of a campaign going on. They have changed that. He is definitely coming in. They are definitely organizing, having Commit to Caucus. They have people in the field, and they have now for a few months. They were, I think, late on it, but they've definitely moved and have an organization now that is certainly going to be able to turn people out in a way. DeSantis has obviously been focused on that for almost a year, going in, where they have really put more effort into this than anyone else. Vivek also has had a ground game. Nikki Haley kind of hasn't, so she's going to be reliant on those that general, like you said, establishment, or the people who are just showing up each time. Maybe they don't care about going in, but they're like done with Trump or something else. So she's going to have to take probably she's probably not bringing new people to the caucuses. She's probably just going to have to take that set of people who are going over there, and maybe even Democrats who decide to cross over and say, we want to mess with the caucuses because we don't have our own caucus this year. That's probably her lane of what she's relying on and where she's at. Everybody else kind of is in a different way, in a way in the Trump lane, but while also being in, like with DeSantis being in a lot of his own, going after the evangelicals and trying to peel some of those people off who say, we want that solid force who's been a good governor.
Well, you just mentioned in passing something that I think is flying under the radar for some people. And it's not that I have a big solution to this, but my grand conspiracy theory is that there will be an awful lot of Democrats that are going to wreak havoc in the caucuses because they've got, what else do they have to do? What else do they have going on? And apparently the Democratic Party in Iowa was seeking to organize a competing caucus, and they just didn't, or it's kind of fallen apart. I don't even know what they're doing, but I do know that leaves an awful lot of Democrats twiddling their thumbs and thinking, oh, hey, well, the Republicans, they have same-day registration, so why can't I just go over and, see what I can do? We'll just, and they've done that many times before. That's a tried and true tactic. And I would be shocked if they don't use that this time around. But, but like I said, I never let my tinfoil hat grow cold. So what do you think that will move and be any factor outside of the quote unquote margin of cheating?
It could be a factor. It just depends. I haven't seen a massive organization from their side on that. So we haven't seen a big push on that. As you said, like the Democrats tried to organize something. So in doing that, they clearly weren't trying to organize the chaos, if you will. But there's going to be a section of these people who either just say, I hate Donald Trump, so I'm going to do this, or I just want to mess with the Republican caucus, so we're going to jump in there, or I'm bored today and I like to do political stuff. How many is that? Is that 1,000? Is it 20,000? I don't know. I mean, I don't see it being like 50 or 100,000, but you could have 5 or 10,000 people show up and do that, maybe. And that can be a difference, a significant percentage point difference in this. But I don't even know where they'll land, other than maybe the idea that maybe they land on Nikki Haley to try to do that, because that's what they've heard in the papers they're reading. That's who they see as a competition. If you read a Des Moines Register and the Resurgence or something else, otherwise, I don't really see this massive Nikki Haley bump that the media keeps trying to talk about. I mean, I don't know many people out there that are going, yes, Nikki Haley, I'm so excited, this is what we have to have, type of thing. It's just kind of sitting in there as kind of an afterthought.
Well, and I think she's got a demographic advantage because there are people that say it would look good to have a younger conservative, well, a younger Republican woman up against an increasingly old and increasingly less incompetent candidate. Again, that's presuming that Joe Biden is actually the nominee, because I think odds are pretty even that we might have a surprise on that side as well. Again, I'm just going to let it all hang out now. I think the Democrats are going to cross over. They're going to vote for Donald Trump because they think that he's the most beatable in a general, against Joe Biden because he's already done it somehow he did that. 81 million votes. And I think that it's entirely possible that if they lock in Donald Trump, who's the most beleaguered candidate that they can come up with, because they've shackled him with all of these legal cases on top of everything, and that the hue and cry will be great. And then on top of all of that, we could see a surprise in the Democratic primary at their nominating convention, that maybe somebody comes out of the woodwork, Joe Biden recedes, and then they have a more popular person step forward that gets swept through just on the basis of star power. I'm not counting anything out. All right. I've never been a betting man, but I don't count any of this out. This is so crazy. Like the movie version of 2024 is going to be awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could see him doing that as well. Getting out there and saying, we think Trump's beatable. I mean, while we, there's all the polls and everything else, we also know, some of them could get scared and be like, oh, well, we thought he was beatable in 2016. Or maybe they go and say, no, he's definitely beatable again. We beat him last time with Biden. We'll do it, or whatever candidate. So we're going to put him up. it's like a crapshoot, you know, what
Yeah.
we don't know where that particular section of voters that may come out and do that is going to actually fall.
Mm. Well, like I said, I'm just combining all of my giant tapestry of conspiracy theories today and just see how it all works out. It'll keep you warm at night. Ryan Rhodes is our excellent guest. He is helping us with some caucus analysis right before the big day, and no better time than now, I think, to again remember that we have this is an amazing opportunity that we have in Iowa, and I've heard the electability argument quite a bit as I talk with my fellow conservatives. And many of them have voted for Trump multiple times, and now they're questioning, is this the best choice, or do I stick by, like, loyalty is a strong pull for many people, and I respect that in a lot of ways. But then the conversation I always ask is, well, nobody inherits my vote. Like, someone has to earn my vote. And the beauty of this wonderful primary process is that we get to choose the best representative of our values and our principles. Electability is also a factor, sure, but I want to know that if somebody's going to office in the way that I determine my vote, because I believe I'm held responsible by my Heavenly Father to use my resources well, and one of those is my vote and my civic voice. And so I want to know that I did the most righteousness that I could and chose the person I thought was most well convicted, best positioned, that had the best record, that would exemplify those values, a person of integrity, and then someone that can win. Yes, that's important as well. We want to be wise about the way we handle that. So it isn't necessarily, I think, someone making this long time loyalty argument as much as I question, is that the best decision? Because there's a different slate of candidates. We're in such a different time after 2020. Everything, it seems like that's a watershed kind of year in our culture. So much is transformed and not much of it for good. And so our question is always, how do we use our vote faithfully, biblically? How do we use it wisely? And how can we do the most good that we can and pick the best option, not just the one that the media tell us, or that even, the political campaigns or manipulation, because they're good at that. Not just what the marketing tells us or what the polls tell us. I have to go with my conscience and what I believe is the best choice to do the most good.
Yeah, and you brought up another interesting thing that I think DeSantis could push on is saying, okay, fine, you think Trump's going to win by 50 points or whatever else. Why don't you get out here and move him back to the right a little bit more? Because he's drifted a little bit on a few things. So use your vote in this case to make a statement to force Trump to continue going back towards the right on our issues, whether it be abortion or maybe pushing on the COVID stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you bring me up and create a challenge, we've seen Trump may go back and start going back towards your way again, more on a few of these issues that you might have concerns about. I mean, that's another reason he could pitch somebody to say, bring me a few more votes.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, I think Trump is very cognizant as well of some of the evangelical creep on there. He's got my old boss, Ben Carson, in Iowa right now.
I saw that.
Going around. Ben has been very popular in that area. He's actually the second most popular person in the party behind Trump. So I think Trump is trying to use that to reach back out and try to give that final push to those evangelicals that he feels like may be creeping over to DeSantis, whether they admit it on the campaign or not. I think that with the knowledge that Bob got out and endorsed and Kim endorsed, and that's a very popular lane for them. So each campaign is certainly doing things, whether they've telegraphed it or said it publicly. They are actually going and pursuing these different voters to kind of break up how are we going to get to that winning margin.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Bob Vander Plaats and Kim Reynolds are really influential with evangelical conservatives, especially. So their endorsement of Ron DeSantis, which is, I give them actually a lot of credit for that, whether or not you agree with their decision, just because it isn't the easiest thing. It would be an easy thing to go with the former president, who's the presumptive nominee based on polls, and they took a strong stand. And I think that's a sign of political courage, independence at the very least. And so I give them credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we shall see whether or not it it moves the needle. I imagine it would. The question is always how much and in what areas too, because each precinct and each county, could have a very different feel too. So it's so fascinating and it's so different because, as you mentioned, it takes a lot of investment. These are people that are really care, that are really passionate. Again, lots of times they have to overcome bad Iowa winter weather. So hopefully we won't have that issue today. It's highly contested, and you have to sit in a room and deal with party business many times for, it's a several hour commitment. It's not just like you go in and you punch a few, names on a ballot and then you get to go home to dinner. It does take a commitment. You're there much of the evening. So these are one of the many reasons why I love Iowans and why I'm so grateful that we play this part in the process. But Iowans like to surprise. So I'm looking forward to it. Ryan, I would like to take a quick break if I may, and I do think we need to talk about the drama that continues in terms of Donald Trump and his legal challenges. The state of Colorado is, I guess I don't know if they took the bait or what happened, if the liberals just decided to release their cries of impotent rage in the form of a legal opinion. I don't know what this is going to be or how effective it will be, but we'll go into the details of all of that and how it might impact the caucuses in the presidential race, as well as, jurisprudence in America. We'll see. We're living in quite a time, my friends, and how all of that might factor into how we vote and make our considerations. When we return, you're listening to Faith Works Live. In today's world, security has never been more vital. And at FaithWorks Live, we're proud to partner with VeriGuard Security. It's a professional physical security service, and they're really raising the bar in security and private investigations. Whether you need a team of professional officers to protect what you have worked hard to build, or their mobile security units for multiple properties or large locations, from business or corporate properties to your home or neighborhood. Perhaps you've got an event coming up. They secure quality security coverage for events large and small, because it's about peace of mind and protecting you, your family, your team, and your property. Settle for nothing less than the best when it comes to your security. You shouldn't have to compromise. When it comes to security, you can trust VeriGuard. Contact them today at veriguard.us. That's VARA guard.us. For security service, you can trust VeriGuard. Are back here on FaithWorks Live, and it's my joy to have with us my brother Ryan Rhodes, who is our caucus analyst extraordinaire, who's a political consultant for many, and but not right now. He's currently unaffiliated, so he gets to tell us what he really thinks, and he knows how it's all done. He knows what goes on in the back rooms, the back doors, and how to organize successfully to run caucus campaigns in the state of Iowa and also nationally, because it's a little different here, but he's got national experience as well, so he can talk to both sides of those considerations. And Ryan, I think as much as I know that Donald Trump likes to he likes to tout all of his successes. Of course, he loves to win. He likes to win big, because that's all I do is I like to win. And you hang out with me and we'll win together. I'll win for you. Trump 2024. I think the last I saw of Donald Trump, it looked like all those legal battles are starting to take their toll on him as a person. He seemed like, and maybe you had a different impression of that, but I've seen him stumble for words recently. I've seen him, and how could it not? He's only a human, and he's been beaten down and beleaguered with, I think, one of the most obvious cases of political persecution that I have seen. And everyone knows, everyone who's a Republican can rightly, I think, come to his defense in the litany of charges that he is currently facing. And the sheer amount of baggage and weight that would put on a person is just, I don't know how he does it, quite frankly, and he's paying quite a price for that. I'm not sure that has bearing electorally on whether or not, I'm not saying that means Republicans should automatically coronate him just because he's being persecuted, because we don't do the victim Olympics in our party, I've been told. We We don't do that. And we earn it. We're merit-based here. But taking a stand is important as well. So I'm kind of two minds in some ways. I'm trying to be very considerate about the impact that all of this will have, both morally, legally. I think this sets horrible precedent in America. And I don't think that this is the system of justice that I think everyone should be scared, frankly, that this is going on under the guise of justice. This is political prosecution. But all of that being said, the latest to come out of this might actually have an impact. We'll see. But there were several states where there were attorneys or prosecutors that were trying to get Donald Trump taken off the ballot by claiming that he was in violation of the constitutional prohibition against any insurrectionists, against those who've been convicted of insurrection, like enemies of the United States. Makes sense. You're coming off a civil war and you don't want people who have openly declared hostility that they were rebels against the United States to then come in and hold the highest office in the land. I get it. Now they're liberals, or I should say leftists, are seeking to use that as an accusation against Donald Trump, get him kicked off the ballot. It has failed, I think, 3 or 4 different states. And now in the state of Colorado, they've actually had some success. So what do you make of that?
Well, I actually have kind of a different take on this. I actually think the Colorado kind of jumped the shark. They've clearly been an activist court. We saw this with the Baker
Yes.
In the gay marriage issue for
Jack Phillips
baking the cake. And they didn't just come at him once. They came at him multiple times.
That's true.
At every different angle they could, and they routinely lost at the Supreme Court. So we already know that the Colorado Supreme Court is a court that has no basis in actual law. They are just simply political pawns that are willing to go out there and destroy their enemies like a third world dictator. So they probably got out there ahead of their skis and were like, oh, well, we just have to do this because we hate him so much. But what they've done is, while all these other things may have taken a while to get to the court, or where the Pennsylvania Secretary of State or the Wisconsin Secretary of State, they might have gotten all the way up to the election when the early ballots are going out and said, oh, well, now we're sending them out without them. And so those ballots may have been able to be sent out without the name on. And then you have to work through the court. And no matter how fast that is, a section of those could have gone out without actually getting a ruling on this. Well, now by doing it in the primary and by saying we're not going to allow them on the ballot, you're having to fast track that to the Supreme Court. They are going to have to take this up. So we're going to know sooner than later, before our nominating convention, what's going to go on with that, and is this precedent? The other thing is, they did it before any potential conviction or any trial. So what they've done is they've forced, whether the Supreme Court agrees with it or not, they're going to force the Supreme Court to make a ruling on somebody who basic law says innocent until proven guilty. So that's just like the standard of American practice, which means that they're going to, even if they might have in other ways come down on their other side of him, they're going to have to say, well, he hasn't been tried, he hasn't been convicted yet, so you can't take him off the ballot yet. Now the question is, will they sit there and say, you can't take him off the ballot, and give a blanket statement that almost takes care of the cases for the general election for him? So it says, oh, you've already made your case, you already lost, we're going to be on the ballot no matter what happens in 2024. You can't take us off the ballot. That case right there could be big for him. The other thing is, they could go back and they could say, we're only ruling on this particular thing. The ruling will change if there's a conviction. Now that then gets into the point where, okay, if he can't be on the ballot, if there's a conviction, then that would get into a potential convention floor fight of other things. So even winning the nomination. So you get a couple factors where it almost gives the GOP as a whole a much longer runway to figure this out, and at least a blueprint for where to go. It also will generally, regardless of what they rule, or if they say we'll have to come back to this, it should give Trump's lawyers a blueprint for how to argue the case should the next step happen either way. So I think these Colorado folks really jumped the shark and actually gave a better chance to the Republicans to see where things are going to go this year as this plays out.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that leftists let their emotions run away with them. I I mean, I appreciate that analysis too. And I think time is there's like this ticking clock over the whole thing. And it does reveal, it does reveal the hand of the prosecutors in these myriad cases that Donald Trump faces. That really their purpose is to make sure that this extends and drags out to deprive Donald Trump of the ability to be either the nominee or an effective candidate in 2024 to be elected, which, none of that should have any place in our justice system. That is not how any of this is supposed to work. None of this is supposed to be decided in a courtroom. It's supposed to be up to the hands of the people of each state to determine, and through the various parties and the means that we have at our disposal, to say who should be our candidate. And you're absolutely right that he's not been convicted of these crimes of which he's being accused, and yet it is it's a far reach than for a court to say, well, because it's based on this non-existent, this imagined accusation, that is not a conviction, that he should then be held liable for that to such an extent that we're not going to let him on the ballot. I mean, that is they're just making things up out of thin air at that point. And that should be enough to have us all up in arms. Again, you know me, you've heard enough of my opinions. I don't exactly hide the ball that I don't know that Donald Trump is the best choice for Republicans this time around. I have real issues with the way he has waffled on life and everything about how he handled 2020. And just the fact that he pinned a medal on Anthony Fauci and still won't apologize for all the mandates and the junk, that the oppression that rolled down under his last year in office. I think he has a lot to answer for. But all of that being said, no matter your feelings on this, I think it's setting such a horrible, it's revealing all of the bias in our legal system. It's revealing the political nature of prosecutions that should have no place in a constitutional republic, in a land of the free, purportedly. And this is what scares me the most, is less just to reveal where my heart is on this, is that if we don't have an unbiased system of true justice, then I mean, it's just corruption. It's just for sale. It's just whoever can cry the loudest or wield the most political pressure. And then it's, no holds barred at that point. Like, then the Republicans are going to do the same thing to the Democrats. And I don't know where that cycle ends.
I mean, I don't know that it necessarily does end without some kind of awakening amongst the country. At some point, you start getting both sides where you just have to go and fight on the field that you're on. I mean, if they're going to put a gun to your head, are you just going to let them shoot you, or are you going to actually go and fight back and figure out whatever way? So I mean, I think they are setting a terrible precedent for all this stuff. Trump was a dictator. Trump was that. Well, if Trump was a dictator, then we should have fired Anthony Fauci. We should have fired Chris. We should have fired a lot more people if he was as dictatorial as they say. I mean, he could have fired him without being a dictator, but with all of that out there, that whole argument seems to fall on deaf ears. Plus, we've never tried to take any of these people off the ballot. I mean, so if we're gonna do that, then fine. Take Joe Biden off the ballot and make him answer and his son answer for the crimes that have clearly been committed, because he's guilty too, and if we don't need a trial for them, we just know he's guilty. So I mean, if you're going to go and do those things and operate that way, you're going to get a backlash. It's just human nature in that form, where maybe the backlash happens early, or maybe it's okay, fine. You guys want to do it. You guys get to take him out. Well, next time when we come back, we're coming back even harder on a different way. I mean, those are very real questions to have to answer about where we are in the state of our electoral politics, in the state of our country, and how we actually interact with our neighbors and the law in our country. And so by setting these precedents, and the other thing, people just say, oh, it's Trump. Okay, it's just Trump. Well, it's not just Trump. They are going after countless other individuals on down the line who haven't committed crimes, who haven't done anything. Their only crime really was violating the Democrat plantation mindset. Look at the pro-lifers being arrested and hauled off for protesting outside of an abortion clinic. While we watch people burn cities down and there's nothing. can't have that double standard and not have people start reacting in a very visceral and negative way to the opposite side, because it's, I don't think I think for a long time we've been a frog in a boiling pot of water, except now they took them out, let them cool off, and they're throwing them back in. And it's like, whoa, this is hot again. I'm going to jump out. And
Yeah.
so that's really where we're at. So I guess we're going to see, we're going to learn a lot about 24. Can they artificially hold up this economy much longer? We'll see. I don't know how they can do that through 24. And if there's a crash, then for us, it looks good. If they can hold it up past 2024 and make people feel like, oh, well, it's not quite that bad, then, maybe they take that. But at some point, this house of cards that's been set up is going to crash, and there's going to be big reverberations, I think.
Yeah, there has to be a reckoning. That's just one of the beautiful things and the unchanging things about the way God designed this, is that natural laws are self-enforcing. Like, you just can't spend other people's what is that, the Margaret Thatcher line, the worst thing about socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. And we're there. And I'm glad you brought up the economy as well, because I think in the general, especially, there will be a lot of people that are that's what the numbers show. I mean, if we're looking at polls, there has never been a less popular Democratic candidate for office ever, especially looking at like someone who actually currently holds the office. Usually they have an advantage. And I think everyone surrounding Biden is terrified. And they should be, because the average everyday person looks around at their life, and maybe they don't spend too much time thinking about all of this political drama and wading into the weeds on policy, but they know that their dollar isn't going as far as it used to. They know that they're having to struggle to pay their bills. They know that Joe Biden promised them a lot of help and he didn't. It's not working. They know that they wanted to buy a house and now they can't because mortgage rates are through the roof. They know all these things. They know that groceries cost too much right now. They know that there are times when they're going to have to make those kinds of choices and put stuff back at the checkout line. Like, it's real basic. And none of that is getting better. So that's a huge disadvantage for the current office holder, which just so happens to be Joe Biden. So I just don't think, like, as much as Democrats care, and at this level, they care deeply about winning elections. And I don't know that they're going to skate into this with Joe Biden based on this kind of misbegotten loyalty that they can't speak out against like they're stuck with him. I don't know that they would take that kind of risk, which is why I hold out this kind of little like secret stash. I've got the popcorn ready for when the fight ensues at the convention. I think that they care a great deal about winning. I think it's win at all costs for them. So I don't know if they can do that with Joe Biden.
I mean, conventional wisdom would say they certainly can't, but I mean, I don't know who they have, because as unpopular as Biden is, Kamala's less popular than Biden.
Right.
And
that
so
takes a lot. Like, that's a full-time job to work at being less popular than Joe Biden. Hats off.
Yeah. So who do they pull out? Is it Gavin Newsom, who got destroyed by Ron DeSantis? Is it Gretchen Whitmer up there in Michigan? Is it even who's it going to be? Do they, try to pull Michelle Obama or somebody out? And I just, once again, as well, whatever they get out there, that's now a newly untested person that people haven't developed an opinion of.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. It can be a good thing in that they get to go and have a blank slate. It can be a bad thing that in that short period of time, we can pounce and also spend all that time defining that person before they get to be defined. And so that popularity instantly takes a hit. So it's really, really going to be, I think, a very wild year in politics, regardless. Everybody keeps saying, well, next year, this year, I don't hear as many people going, well, next year it's going to get less crazy, because now crazy is just the norm.
Crazy is normal. What's wrong with you? Everybody's crazy now, don't you know? It's like Wonderland all over again. We're all mad here. It helps. Buckle up, Buttercup. That's all I got to say. Now, I know we've got to wrap up the convo, and you've got a lot of festivities ahead, but I wonder if you could give me just your overall view of the issues and the factors you think will play the biggest role when it comes down to caucus voting. For example, I've heard more talk about foreign policy and Ukraine and Israel lately than I ever have. I think in any caucus cycle, there's actually been a lot of focus on foreign policy, but I'm not sure I can tell how many people are going to switch their vote based on those kinds of positions. I think the personality elements have gotten so big that I'm hearing a lot more about personalities than about issues. But I know Iowans, and I know deep down the things that they care about, the things that move them when it comes down to who should represent them. There's some really deep-seated things about life, things about freedom and our liberty that really matter, our bodily autonomy when it comes to things like mandates and the oppression of government tyranny, not to mention the all-out insanity that's happening in our schools, where they're trying to confuse and literally destroy children, body, mind, and soul. I mean, all of that's not a footnote in our history. That's a main thing for people. And so those are kind of my thoughts as to what's going to rise to the top and what will move that needle on caucus night. But what are your final thoughts / predictions / hopes?
Well, here's the thing. For if Trump's going to go and walk away with this and just be the nominee, he needs to go and maintain his 50%. If he stays out there at 50%, then this is all over but the shouting. And you're going to go to the next state. It's going to be hard to stop any of that momentum. If DeSantis wants to make a move, he needs to show, because that's the other thing too. A lot of people don't want to be on the losing side. He needs to show some movement. I mean, I think before we get to the caucus, if he wants to have a shot, I think he needs to show some form of thing, whether it's his own poll, whether it's finding something else out there where he has a significant movement that gets him up into the high 20s or 30 or close to 30%, and then see if his ground game can overcome some of that lag. And then, okay, yeah, he outperforms the polls. And I do think it's possible, very possible that he does that, but overcoming 30% is a lot different than overcoming 10%. Those are tough cases to make at a caucus when it's that far apart. So that's going to be his team's job. They're going to have to get out and do that. I certainly think that Bob and Kim matter more than is showing in those polls. But I also think there's a lot of undecided people who, when forced to choose, they go one way or another. But I do think there's a larger chunk of people who have not 100% made up their mind. And that's the pitch. That's the play right in there. I don't think Nikki Haley's growing. I think she's grown to the extent she can. I think the field is basically, can Ron DeSantis make a closing sale with these people, or does Trump get out there and make his closing sale and say, you know what, don't move on? Personally, if I was Trump, I'd say, you know what, I'd stop with all these like attacks on Ron necessarily, and I'd go, okay, valiant effort. We were political opponents. I'm so far up. Come back next time, kid. But I mean, that's probably what I'd say is, look, this is where I'm at. That's what it is. If I'm DeSantis, I say, this is this is gone. We've tried that before.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you what you want. Let's get out here and show that we as a party can put up a new voice, somebody who's standing and who's going to fight. And it's not about flash. It's about the fight. It's about doing the job. And, it's the difference between an Alabama football team and an Iowa football team or something. But one of them, you still get your 10 wins. The other one's got a little more flash and whatnot about it. But yeah, I mean, those are really the cases they need to make. DeSantis is going to have to go over. I think the other thing to watch, for instance, on caucus night is, where are these returns coming in from? If DeSantis is going to win, he is going to have to win areas like Sioux City. He's going to have to do really, really well in the suburbs. Not let Nikki Haley go into him there. Cedar Rapids, others. Trump, from all my travels around the state, Trump really, really is solid in the rural Iowa areas. But DeSantis is going to have to rack it up in the not fully rural, but semi, like the Newtons, the Pellas, the Sioux Cities, the Council Bluffs. If he does well, if he can top him there, then he has a chance. If Trump starts walking away with any of those, then then it's going to be a landslide across as all the stuff comes in later in the night. So everybody has their targets. The matter is, where are they going to turn them out, and how are they going to do that?
I really appreciate that analysis. Solid gold star stuff. Ryan, thank you so much for making the time to do this, for giving us your expert opinion and doing so repeatedly. Like I said, you're our official caucus consultant. Thank you so much for all of this. And have a wonderful celebration with your family. Enjoy all the Christmassy stuff, delicious desserts notwithstanding. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too. And it's going to be amazing. It's going to be fun, no matter what. God is in control. And so I know I say that, but realizing that anew just kind of allows me to put my hands up like on the roller coaster and say, okay, Lord, I'm going to do my duty. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to armor up, show up, fight hard for what I know, but I know you got this. And I don't know what the next season is going to be like for my state or for my country, but I know I'm here. This is my season, and as many days and as much, oxygen and daylight as God gives me, I'm going to use it to fight for what I know is right, to love my family fiercely, to speak boldly about the truth and proclaim the hope that we have in Jesus Christ above all, and to fight for the freedom to continue to do that, Lord willing, for my children, my grandchildren, and every generation after me. So that's where my eyes are coming up on caucus time. And I know that if you find this conversation helpful, that's probably where you are too. So I'm glad we're thinking that way. We're singing off the same song sheet. So thank you for listening. Pass this podcast on to a friend, a fellow Iowan, or just someone who's curious about the whole political process, how it works, how we think. It is a little bit different. I'd love to hear your feedback and what's motivating your vote as well. So connect with me, where you'll find us at FaithWorks Live on Facebook, on YouTube, all the internet places, if we haven't been canceled yet. And until next time, we have our mission, which is to love God, to serve people, and to live free. Thanks for listening.